warmer,
Right.
humid,
Warmer weather,
And
This
sunlight.
and sunlight.
Yeah.
This is colder
And it's
and damp.
going the wrong direction.
So,
We
well,
should
you're
be
becoming a
careful.
regular. Did you get demoted or something?
my week in the trenches.
Oh, which outlet are you with?
NBC.
NBC.
Yeah, so we did 1 weekend and there were 2.
No, it's a pleasure to see you, but I just noticed you've been hanging out. It's the end. When you have to cover Kudlow, it's like the bottom of the rung.
So I heard your comments about
That was
limiting
the most fun
liability.
interview I've had in ages.
Limiting liability for
Yes, sir. Yeah, well, I've said-
coronavirus patients
Yeah.
who go into an establishment or whatever and they catch the virus.
I've said this earlier this week.
How would you work? I mean, sometimes when Congress does something like that, limiting liability, they create a compensation program for people.
That could be part of it. I don't want to be too detailed, but the point is, you sort of have two classes, the way I see it in my mind. And I'm not a lawyer, but you've got your medical professionals and your medical facilities, and they're liable for lawsuits. All right, and I don't think that's good. They're doing the best they can. So we have to watch that. Then you have your small businesses, whether it's a retail store, a pharmacy, a restaurant, certainly. They have rules. You know, states, cities, and counties have lots of guidelines of good practices, and then maybe strengthened as we go into the reopening. My point is, if a restaurant is found guilty of gross negligence, that's different. All right, you're going to the pokey, okay, or you're going to pay a fortune. But if they're practicing the rules, and regs, and guidance that they should be, and regrettably, a customer or an employee, regrettably gets the infection or is infected by the virus, I don't think there should be a lawsuit. I think we should help them. Now, we may help them with assistance if they go to a hospital or provider. Government, federal, state, local will pay for them there, but it's not a lawsuit. That's my point. It's not a lawsuit, and I know a lot of trial lawyers. I used to interview these guys on my old TV show all the time. Some are better than others, like everything in life. But you have to give confidence to the small business person that if something unfortunate happens, it's not their fault. They should not be sued. We have to limit those liabilities. Otherwise, they're not going to go into business.
So what is the White House able to do? What is Congress even able to do? My understanding of this is that a lot of this resides with the states.
Some of it does. Some of it can be done through executive order or regulatory changes, and some of it might require legislation. We're looking at it right now. We're looking at all the options. It's just a subject that is worth talking about because of the virus.
Yes. It's like giving federal protection to people, whether there's a state cause of action. That's kind of screwy.
A little bit. I mean, it's in other words, if you're engaging in what I would call best practices, you should be safeguarded. If you're guilty of gross negligence, that's different. All right, then you're out of here. But these things, I mean, just think about it. Just think about it as just practically. And I don't know everything there is to know about this subject, but just think about it. You go in and have dinner with the proper physical, social distancing and so forth, and all the various hygienes and guidelines are being observed by the restaurant. And a couple days later, you find out that you're tested positive. Now, I don't think the restaurants should be sued. I don't think they should be held liable for that. I think it's pretty hard to trace where you might have gotten it, and I think that kind of thing has got to be dealt with. I don't have the final answer to it.
I mean, the question she's asking is great, though. I mean, is that the purview of the federal government, or is it the purview of the states? Because they're the ones who would sort of be policing it.
You know what? It's probably both. Probably a little of both. Because remember, insurance. I mean, insurance. You're right in this sense. State insurance regulators are very, very powerful, much more powerful than federal and national. So you're right on that point. But I think as a legal matter, when it comes to insurance and liabilities, I think it's something just
as a practical matter, and this is my last point on this, if we could just jump up a little bit, even beyond restaurants, the president has said that one thing they could potentially do is give rapid coronavirus tests before people are allowed to come back to work, or some sort of temperature checks. So is that, at least on the rapid coronavirus test, is that really realistic? Do we have enough tests like that for businesses to be able to test people before they come back to work?
Well, I think it will be. Now, I don't think, and again, I'm not the medical expert. You gotta go talk to Tony Fauci or Deborah or somebody. But look, I think let's take the campus here. So I come in the gate, I get the temperature check. During the day, if I'm going in to see POTUS, I get a quick temperature check. If I'm going into the sit room, I get a quick temperature check. Every week, if you have a lot of contact with the boss every week, you get that quick swab. We've had 3 of them, fortunately, negative. I think that the resources for that, for businesses, as a New Yorker, I think about flooding into big buildings, or it could be a factory or whatever. I think the resources will be there. I mean, I saw Mike Pence, Vice President Pence. I was reading the clips this morning. Something like 60,000 tests a month ago. Now we have multi-million tests. It's just really ramping up. So by May and June and July, when presumably the reopening is in full swing, I think you're going to have a lot of resources. Listen, the CEOs and the business executives tell me this all the time. They want to do it, and they're going to pay for a lot of it because they don't think they're going to get. I won't name names, but I had a bunch of senior sports executives, people that own some of these sports teams, and they don't think anybody's going to show up unless they can have some confidence, at least for one of these. But I do think, the health people tell me that you don't have to test everybody. I mean, there's this idea of surveillance testing. You do 1 out of 5 or something like that. I'm not the expert, but I'm just saying, coming back to the liability. My guess is the restaurants in New York City. I can't speak for every restaurant, but God, like my wife said, I'm not going to tell you which restaurant here in Washington. She said, even though I hate it, I just really want to go to that restaurant. I mean, no one's gone to the restaurant, neither of you. In New York, I think a lot of these restaurants are going to want some form of testing. Otherwise, their steady clients aren't going to come back. So you see what I'm saying? It's in everybody's interest to do this right. It is, and I know it isn't going to be perfect. I know that. It will cut back a lot. That's what I'm thinking.
The liability thing is a confidence question too, right?
I think it is. I think it is. That one, if you're not protected, and it could be the local hardware store, the local stationery store. We used to live up in Madison and 93rd Street, wonderful neighborhood in New York. So all these stores, wonderful little stores plus restaurants. Those folks, they're living on thin margins, and they don't want to be sued. So again, gross negligence, you're out of here. But other than that, I'd like to find a way to protect them. Maybe I can't. I don't know yet, but we're looking. We're really looking hard at it.
Mr. Kudlow, forgive if you've addressed this already, but I'd like to ask you to weigh in on this.
I hope I'm not getting in too much trouble. And you get the gist of what I'm saying.
Yeah. That's very helpful. I think that's been a big question.
And there's conversations going on. We got the lawyers are talking about it. And
speaking to the mic, please, sir.
I'm sorry. We're all sort of trying to circle those wagons to figure out how we can be helpful. Yes, go ahead.
I was going to ask you about this issue between the idea of a federal bailout from the states versus Mitch McConnell's idea about the states declaring bankruptcy. What do you think about that?
Let's see how that plays out. Let's see how that plays. I don't want to get ahead of that curve. We'll see how that plays out. I think what Senator McConnell says is very important because he's raising an issue. We've spent a lot of money. I think we can all agree. I was just going through the numbers with Stu Varney. Budget spending, I think we're at $2.7 trillion. The Fed lending, which is a leverage off of the ESF money in the Treasury, is is about $4 trillion. And then the Fed, by the way, has increased its balance sheet. They've increased the money supply by $2 trillion. I was just looking at it this morning. So help me with this. So I got 2.7 budget. It was two. It was
federal lending.
more or less that's budget spending. The Fed's another $4 trillion, so that's 6.7, right? And then the they've created money supply into about $2 trillion. So you're in the $9 to $10 trillion range. What Leader McConnell's saying is we need to look at that and see carefully how we want to do it in the future. You cannot spend indefinitely. And we've worked with the states. We will continue to work with the states. I think the relationships have been pretty darn good during this crisis. But they have already seen quite a lot of money. And don't forget the Fed, states can issue bonds, right? And the Fed has a lending facility to help them issue bonds. So I'm not saying one way or the other, but those are the issues. And as I mentioned to Stu Varney on the Fox show, I'd like to see some incentives put in for growth. In other words, the spending is keeping us alive. It's a rescue mission. We need the cash. We need the liquidity. We need to help the payrolls. We're giving essentially assistance to 175 million Americans. It's the greatest. It's a hell of a thing. It's the greatest in history, and I'm all for it. I'm all for it. We've worked hard for it. Mr. Mnuchin's done a great job, as has the president. But there's some of us supply-siders believe lower tax rates or tax incentives help revive the animal spirits also. So we might be looking at that. The president has said, as you know, he wants a payroll tax holiday till the end of the year. We're looking at some go back to 100% deductions for business, meals, entertainment, sports events. We might want to make from this 2017 bill, very helpful business investment expensing, immediate 100% expensing. That stuff starts phasing down in 2020. It was very helpful to the economic boom. We might want to revisit making that permanent. I'm not saying yes to this, yes to that. I'm just putting it on the table.
Larry, this might be a bit premature to be thinking about, but is there any discussion going on that you've heard about people?
Sorry, my nose is running from allergies. Really. Sorry.
People who have the antibodies, or what's their antibodies? People who have the antibodies. Some way of an immunity passport. Some countries have talked about some way of getting those people back to work.
Yes.
Is there any ideas being discussed around that?
Without naming names, I've had a couple of CEOs say this, and a couple of sports team owners say that. It's like, was it in the airport? You go right through. What's it called? You go right through the gate.
Pre-check or global
pre-check, yeah.
But
okay.
yeah, it's like that.
Right.
So
Clear.
if you can prove immunity or something, you have a card or something. I don't know what. Maybe it's Easy Pass, like in automobiles. We all have Easy. Go right through. We know we're okay. Something like that is very interesting. But we don't have a concrete proposal, but it comes up in the conversations.
Question about the government policies. So Republicans, conservatives, you have been against these big government policies for so long, and we're seeing a lot of them come out of Congress right now. And so moving forward, it sounds like you would like to see something that's a little bit more like tax breaks versus these bailouts that
I think it's not so much tax breaks, it's just the idea of growth incentives. And I am a conservative, and I've been around a very long time, and I worked over there in Ronald Reagan's first term in the budget. The rescue spending was essential, absolutely essential, and I'm proud of that. We got it done. But on the other hand, as the economy gradually reopens, I think we might want to look at some lower tax rates. One of the nice parts, the president's in favor of the payroll tax holiday, so am I. That would give the average worker 7.5% higher wage, just because of the tax cut. So tax cuts have a good history of helping the economy, but rescue missions with cash also.
What about
has a
senior
good, I don't
citizens?
want to get in trouble with you. I'm saying you
Who
got.
aren't working but are relying on their 401k, they're relying on retirement savings, Medicare, Medicaid. What do you do to help them?
Me, I'd let them out tax free.
You what?
I would let them out of those things tax free.
So let them get out of their 401k
Yes.
tax free.
Yes. It might be too soon. I would loosen that up. Now, some of that was in the CARES Act, because I know I worked with the Senate Finance Committee. I don't know precisely, but I'm pretty sure some of the tax penalties were waived for early, I won't call it early retirement, just early redemption. I got to go
We're
back.
gonna need that tax revenue though, don't we, at some point? from
Someday
payroll flowing?
in America we will have tax.
Hey Larry, can you just explain quickly how the immigration ban is going to help the economy?
I'm going to pass on that. If the president believes a lot of unemployed Americans will be helped, but
Do you agree?
I gotta go. Take care. Nice to see you. Come back again, will you? Come back again.